The champagne tasted like metal in my mouth the moment I saw him standing in the doorway. Not Yi-won, my fiancé, but the brother no one talked about. The one whose name made the household staff look at their feet. Hyun-sik. He wore a black suit like armor and watched the engagement party like a man surveying wreckage before it happened. I set down my glass before my hand could shake. My name is Grace Park, and 3 months ago I was a pediatric nurse working double shifts to pay off my mother's medical debt. Then Yi-won walked into the children's ward with his nephew, his smile warm and his intentions clear from the beginning. He courted me properly, met my mother, promised stability. His family owned half the luxury developments in Seoul, he said. Legitimate business, clean money. I believed him because I needed to. The engagement party filled his family's penthouse with 200 guests I didn't know. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, women in dresses that cost more than my yearly salary. Yi-won kept his hand on my lower back, introducing me to executives and politicians, his touch possessive but gentle. He was handsome in an obvious way, charming, safe. Then his brother arrived 90 minutes late, and the room's temperature dropped. Hyun-sik moved through the crowd like water parting around stone. People smiled at him with their mouths only. Men straightened their spines. Women found reasons to look elsewhere. He was taller than Yi-won, leaner, with the kind of face that belonged in old paintings of generals. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that tracked movement with predatory precision. No smile, no warmth. Just brutal, carving intelligence. "That's my brother," Yi-won murmured against my ear, his hand tightening on my waist. "Don't let him bother you. He handles the family's difficult business. We keep separate spheres." Difficult business. The word sat wrong in my mouth. Hyun-sik accepted a glass of whiskey from a server without looking at her and made his way toward the balcony. He didn't greet anyone, didn't acknowledge the celebration, just moved through the party like a man walking through a museum of his own boredom. Our eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. It felt like being X-rayed. Like every lie I'd told myself about Yi-won's family business got cataloged and filed in some mental archive I'd never see. His gaze held no emotion, no judgment, just brutal, complete assessment. Then he looked away and stepped onto the balcony, disappearing into the Seoul night. My heart hammered against my ribs. "He's intense," I said, keeping my voice light. Yi-won laughed. "He's damaged, ignore him, tonight's about us." But the party felt different after that, like someone had turned on lights in a room I'd been navigating in the dark. I watched Yi-won work the crowd, his charm practiced and perfect, and wondered for the first time what he actually did for the family business. What separate spheres meant, why his brother looked like violence wrapped in expensive wool. The guests began leaving around midnight. Yi-won got pulled into conversation with a city councilman, leaving me near the dessert table with a plate I wasn't eating from. I felt him before I saw him. That same cold awareness that made my skin prickle. Hyun-sik stood 3 feet away, his back to the windows, his whiskey untouched in his hand. Up close he was even more severe. Scar tissue along his knuckles, another thin line disappearing into his collar. His suit fit him like it had been designed to hide weapons. Maybe it had been. "You're a nurse," he said, not a question. His voice was low, controlled, without inflection. "Yes. Pediatric unit at Severance Hospital. Night shifts mostly. Your mother has stage 3 lung cancer. Treatment at a San medical center. You've been paying out of pocket because her insurance lapsed." My blood went cold. "How do you?" "Yi-won didn't tell you what we do." Still no emotion in his voice, just facts delivered like autopsy results. "He never does. He prefers the fantasy." I should have walked away. Should have found Yi-won and demanded answers. Instead, I stood there while this terrifying man recited my life like he'd memorized my file. "My brother collects beautiful things," Hyun-sik continued, his dark eyes fixed on my face with that same surgical precision. "Art, cars, women, he's good at the acquisition, less interested in the maintenance." "That's cruel." "It's accurate." He took 1 sip of whiskey, his throat moving in the low light. "You seem intelligent, so I'll give you information he won't. The Park family isn't in real estate development. We're in debt collection, protection services, and territorial management. We own 40% of the businesses south of the river, and they pay us monthly for the privilege of operating without interference. Yi-Won handles the public face. I handle enforcement. The room tilted slightly. Why are you telling me this? Because you're about to marry into a family that will make you complicit in things you haven't agreed to yet. And because, he paused, his gaze sharpening, you remind me of someone who didn't get a choice. Before I could respond, Yi-Won materialized at my elbow, his smile bright but his eyes hard. Hyung, I see you've met Grace. Briefly, Hyun-sik set down his glass. Congratulations on your engagement. The words held no warmth. No hostility either, just absolute neutrality that somehow felt more dangerous than either extreme. Thank you for coming, Yi-Won said, his hand sliding to my lower back again. Territorial. I know how busy you are. I'm always available for family. Hyun-sik's eyes moved to where Yi-Won touched me, then back to his brother's face. Something passed between them. Some silent communication built on years of brotherly warfare I couldn't decode. Then Hyun-sik nodded once and walked away, disappearing into the elevator without looking back. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my apartment staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation I'd had with Yi-Won, every vague answer about work, every expensive gift I'd accepted without asking where the money came from, every time he'd steered conversations away from his family with practiced charm. My phone buzzed at 2 a.m, unknown number. Your mother's medical bills were paid in full yesterday. Treatment plan upgraded to include experimental therapy. Consider it an engagement gift. Yi-Won. I stared at the message until my eyes burned. He'd paid off hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt without asking me, without giving me the chance to refuse. The relief was instant and nauseating. My mother would get the treatment she needed. I wouldn't spend the next decade drowning in payments. And I'd just been bought. I didn't respond to the message. Instead, I pulled up Severance Hospital's employee database and searched for any connection between the Park family and the medical center. It took me 40 minutes to find it. 3 board members with clear ties to Park family businesses. Large donations made quarterly. A new oncology wing funded entirely by Park Holdings. They owned pieces of everything. The next morning, I went to work like normal, but normal had shattered. I moved through rounds checking vitals on sleeping children while my mind spun through scenarios. I could break the engagement, give back the ring, reject the blood money that had saved my mother's life. Except I couldn't, because she was already scheduled for her first experimental treatment, because I'd already signed the consent forms, because I'd already accepted the deal even if I hadn't known I was making it. That's how they work, I realized. They don't force you. They just make refusal impossible. My shift ended at 7. I walked to my car through the dark parking garage, my bag heavy on my shoulder, and found Hyun-sik leaning against my driver's side door. Same black suit, same absolute stillness. A cigarette burned between his fingers, smoke curling up toward the fluorescent lights. I stopped walking. You didn't answer my brother's message, he said, exhaling smoke. He's upset. How do you know what messages I get? I know everything about you, Miss Park-to-be. Your credit score, your nursing license, the name of your childhood dog. I know you take the long route home to avoid the street where your father died. I know you haven't dated anyone seriously in 3 years. I know exactly how much debt you were carrying and how desperately you needed it to disappear. Anger burned through fear. So you're here to threaten me into thanking him? No. Hyun-sik dropped the cigarette and ground it under his heel with mechanical precision. I'm here to tell you that payment was my idea, not his. Yi-Won would have used your debt as leverage, let it accumulate interest, kept you dependent. I simply eliminated the variable. Why? Because I don't believe in long-term manipulation. Quick resolution, clean outcomes. You're either in this family or you're not. Debt makes the decision unclear. He pushed off my car and stepped aside, giving me access to the door. Up close, I could see the scar tissue was worse than I'd thought. burns along his collarbone, another thin line through his left eyebrow, damage collected like evidence of survival. "If you want out," he continued, his voice dropping lower, "you have 72 hours to return the ring and cancel the engagement. After that, you're family, and family doesn't leave." That's not a choice, that's an ultimatum. Yes, no apology in his eyes, no regret. But it's the only honest conversation you'll have about this marriage. Yi-won will promise you love and partnership and comfortable ignorance. I'm promising you exactly what you'll get: complicity, protection, and depending on how useful you are, possibly respect. He walked away before I could respond, his footsteps echoing against concrete. I stood there shaking, my keys biting into my palm, trying to understand why brutal honesty felt safer than Yi-won's gentle lies. I drove home on autopilot and found my mother awake in her bedroom, her face brighter than I'd seen in months. "Grace, sweetheart," the hospital called. "They moved up my treatment. The doctor says I'm a candidate for the new therapy. They're so optimistic." Her joy felt like broken glass in my chest. I made her tea and helped her back to bed, then sat in my dark living room with Yi-won's unopened messages filling my phone screen. He'd sent 12 texts. Flowers were being delivered in the morning. He wanted to take me to dinner, wanted to discuss wedding venues, wanted to remind me how much he loved me. Hyun-sik had sent nothing. The 72-hour deadline haunted me through 3 shifts at the hospital. I moved through pediatric rounds like a ghost, smiling at worried parents while my mind calculated moral equations that never balanced. My mother's life versus my soul. Her survival versus my complicity in whatever the Park family did in the shadows. On the second day, I tried to research the family's business. I found glossy websites for Park holdings, property management, urban development, charitable foundations. Nothing that explained the way people looked at Hyun-sik, nothing that accounted for the scars or the predatory stillness. I called Yi-won that night and asked him directly, "What does your brother do?" Silence on the line. Then carefully, "Hyun-sik handles security and risk management." "Why?" "Because he scared me." "He scares everyone, baby. That's his job, but he'd never hurt you, your family now." That word again, family, like it was both promise and prison. "I'll talk to him, make sure he keeps his distance. You don't need to interact with that side of things." But I wanted to. That was the thing that terrified me most. I wanted to understand the brutal efficiency in Hyun-sik's eyes. Wanted to know what turned a man into a weapon wrapped in Armani. Wanted to understand the scars. The 72-hour deadline came and went. I didn't return the ring. Yi-won took me to dinner at an exclusive restaurant where the staff knew his name. He talked about honeymoon destinations and which of his properties we should live in after the wedding. He was attentive and charming and completely oblivious to the fact that I was drowning. Midway through dessert, his phone buzzed. His expression shifted. "I need to take this business. I'll be right back." He stepped outside, leaving me alone at a table that cost more than my monthly rent. Through the window, I watched him pace and gesture, his charming mask slipping to show something harder underneath. Not dangerous like his brother, just ruthlessly focused. I felt Hyun-sik before I saw him. He materialized at my table like smoke, sliding into Yi-won's empty chair with predatory grace. No greeting, no explanation for his presence. He just sat there studying me with those dark, dissecting eyes while my heart hammered. "You stayed," he said finally. "My mother needs treatment. Your mother is insurance for good behavior now. You understand that?" I did. God help me, I did. Hyun-sik reached across the table and picked up my wine glass, examining it like he was checking for poison. "Yi-won thinks you're soft, pliable. He thinks you'll smile at parties and ignore the work. He's wrong." "How do you know?" "Because soft women don't work night shifts at pediatric hospitals. They don't negotiate with insurance companies or make payment plans that take a decade to fulfill. You're a survivor, Miss Park. You've just been surviving in a system that rewards suffering. We reward efficiency." He set down the wine glass and stood, buttoning his suit jacket with mechanical precision. Someone is stealing from the family. Someone close. Yi-won refuses to see it because he prefers his fantasy of loyalty. You're going to help me find them. Why would I do that? Because when I find them, they'll be dealt with. And if you're complicit through willful ignorance, you'll be dealt with too. But if you help me, his dark eyes held mine with absolute focus, you might actually survive this family intact. He walked away as Yi-won returned, passing his brother in the restaurant's entrance with barely a glance. Yi-won slid back into his seat, all smiles again, completely unaware of the bomb his brother had just placed in my lap. Sorry about that. Where were we? I smiled and lied through my teeth. Honeymoon destinations. The wedding planning consumed the next 2 weeks. Dress fittings, venue tour, guest lists that read like a registry of Seoul's elite. Yi-won's mother, a severe woman with Hyun-sik's eyes but none of his restraint, tolerated me with cold politeness. His father had died years ago. No one talked about how. I didn't see Hyun-sik again until the family dinner. It was tradition, Yi-won explained. Every month, the inner circle gathered at the main house for a formal meal. Business and family intertwined. I wore a conservative dress and pearl earrings and felt like I was walking to my execution. The main house was a traditional hanok hidden behind modern security. Stone walls, manicured gardens, armed men in expensive suits who nodded at Yi-won and studied me with blank efficiency. Inside, 15 people sat around a low table laden with food I was too nervous to eat. Hyun-sik sat at his mother's right hand, his expression carved from stone. I was seated between Yi-won and his cousin, a nervous man who kept refilling my water glass with shaking hands. The conversation flowed in Korean too rapid for me to follow completely, but I caught fragments. Territorial disputes, payment schedules, someone named Min who wasn't delivering on time. Then Hyun-sik's voice cut through the chatter. We've had 3 shipments intercepted in the last month. Someone's selling information to the Kims. The room went silent. That's a serious accusation, Yi-won's mother said, her chopsticks perfectly still. Do you have proof? I have patterns. The Kims knew our routes, our schedules, our security protocols. That information comes from inside. Yi-won shifted beside me. Could be coincidence. The Kims are aggressive, but they're not stupid. They wouldn't risk open war. They would if they thought we were weak. Hyun-sik's eyes swept the table, cataloging reactions. If they thought we were distracted by weddings and legitimacy. The barb landed. Yi-won's hand tightened on his chopsticks. My engagement has nothing to do with operational security, he said carefully. Grace is family now. She'll learn discretion. Will she? Not a question. Hyun-sik looked directly at me for the first time since I'd entered the house. Tell me, Miss Park, you work at Severance Hospital. Do you know Dr. Choi Min-jun, cardiovascular surgeon, 4th floor? Ice flooded my veins. Yes, we've worked together on cases. He's been treating Park family associates for 10 years. Very discreet, very well compensated. Hyun-sik's voice remained perfectly neutral, but his eyes were dissecting me alive. 3 weeks ago, he called the Kim family's attorney asking about protection and relocation assistance. Why would our trusted surgeon suddenly need protection from us? The question hung in the air like smoke. I thought about Dr. Choi, nervous, brilliant, always looking over his shoulder in the parking garage. I'd attributed it to surgeon paranoia. I don't know, I said quietly. Neither do I yet. Hyun-sik returned to his meal, but I will. The dinner ended in strained silence. Yi-won drove me home with his jaw tight, one hand on the steering wheel, the other crushing mine. Don't let him get in your head. Hyun-sik sees threats everywhere. It's made him paranoid. Is Dr. Choi in danger? Doctor. Choi is an employee who signed contracts he understood. If he's betrayed us, there will be consequences. If he hasn't, he has nothing to fear. That's how it works. Yi-won pulled up to my building and turned to face me, his expression softening. I know this is a lot. I know the family business is complicated. But you're marrying me, Grace, not them, not the work, me. I wanted to believe him. Instead, I went upstairs and searched hospital records for Dr. Choi's schedule. He was working the night shift all week. Cardiovascular wing, 4th floor. I put on my scrubs and went back to work. I found Dr. Choi at 3 a.m, reviewing cardiac scans in an empty office. He jumped when I knocked, his hand moving to his chest. "Jesus, Grace, you scared me." "Sorry, can we talk?" He glanced at the doorway behind me, then back to his screens. "About what?" "About why you're terrified." His face went gray. "I don't know what you mean." "Dr. Choi." I closed the office door and kept my voice low. "I'm engaged to Park Jae-won. His family knows you contacted the Kims. Whatever you're involved in, it's going to get you killed unless you're smart about the next 48 hours. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Then, slowly, he sank into his chair. I tried to get out. I thought if I had leverage, if I could trade information for protection. What information? Surgical records, patient identities. The family has me operate on people who can't go to regular hospitals. Gunshot wounds, knife injuries. I've been keeping records for years. Thought it was insurance. His laugh was brittle. I'm an idiot. Where are the records? Safe deposit box. Bank of Seoul, Gangnam branch, but it doesn't matter. They're going to kill me anyway. I thought about Hyun-sik's surgical precision. The way he cataloged threats and eliminated variables. Dr. Choi wasn't wrong. "Give me the records," I said. "What?" "Give me access to the box. Let me handle this." "Why would you help me? You're marrying into the family." Because I recognized the cage Dr. Choi was in. Because I understood the desperate math of survival. Because if I was going to be complicit in this family's business, I wanted to choose whose side I was on. "Because," I said quietly, "you remind me of someone who didn't get a choice." Dr. Choi wrote down the bank information with shaking hands. "They'll kill you too if they find out." "Maybe, but I've got something you don't." "What?" "Access." I left the hospital as dawn broke over Seoul and went straight to the bank. The safe deposit box contained 20 years of surgical records, names I recognized from news reports, politicians, businessmen, crime bosses from families I'd heard whispered about, and detailed notes about which procedures had been done to save lives and which had been done to hide evidence. It was enough to bring down half of Seoul's power structure. I photographed everything with my phone and returned the originals. Then I went home, showered, and called Hyun-sik from an untraceable number I'd set up years ago for my mother's medical emergencies. He answered on the first ring. No greeting, just, "Speak." "Dr. Choi isn't your leak. He's desperate and stupid, but he's not working with the Kims. Your leak is closer." Silence. Then, "Who is this?" "Someone with information you need. There's a coffee shop on Uedo, the one with the blue door. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., come alone." I hung up before he could respond. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived. I chose a table in the back corner where I could see both exits and ordered nothing. My hands shook. My throat felt like broken glass. Every instinct screamed that I was making a catastrophic mistake. Then Hyun-sik walked through the blue door. He spotted me immediately and moved through the cafe with that same predatory grace, sliding into the seat across from me like we'd planned this meeting weeks ago. No visible weapons. No backup I could see. Just him and his brutal, focused intelligence. "You're full of surprises, Miss Park. You said I reminded you of someone who didn't get a choice. I'm choosing. By meeting me in secret and claiming you have information." His dark eyes searched my face. "This is either very brave or profoundly stupid. I haven't decided which." I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table, showing him one photograph from Dr. Choi's records. A surgery performed on a Kim family lieutenant. Dated 2 months ago. Location: a private clinic I recognized from Park family properties. Hyun-sik's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes sharpened into absolute focus. He scrolled through 3 more photos, his jaw tightening with each image. "Where did you get these?" Dr. Choi kept records. He thought they were insurance. He's wrong, but the records exist. And they prove your leak isn't him. It's whoever scheduled that surgery on Kim family people in your own facility. Hyun-sik's fingers paused on the screen. Who scheduled it? Someone with access to property management and operational security. Someone who could authorize facility use without raising red flags. I leaned forward. Someone who benefits from both families staying in conflict while he plays intermediary. Understanding moved across Hyun-sik's face like sunrise, cold and absolute. My brother, he said quietly. I don't know that for certain, but Dr. Choi's records show a pattern. 5 surgeries in the last year, all Kim family associates, all logged as Park Holdings employees for insurance purposes, all scheduled by the same administrative code. Hyun-sik set down my phone with mechanical precision. You realize what you've just done? Yes. You've accused my brother of treason, of playing both sides while pretending to build legitimacy. If you're wrong, he'll destroy you. If you're right, he stopped. If you're right, this family tears itself apart. I know. Why bring this to me? Because Yi-won's charm was suffocating me. Because Hyun-sik's brutal honesty felt like the only clean thing in this entire gilded nightmare. Because I'd rather survive with clear eyes than die comfortable and ignorant. Because, I said, meeting his dark gaze without flinching, you promised me respect if I was useful. I'm being useful. Something that might have been approval flickered behind his eyes. You'll need to testify to this, in front of the family, with evidence. I have copies. You'll be painting a target on yourself that never comes off. I already have one. The moment I said yes to Yi-won's proposal, I became a piece on someone's board. I'd rather be a piece that moves than one that gets sacrificed. Hyun-sik studied me for a long moment. Then he stood, buttoning his suit jacket. There's a family meeting in 3 days, private, just the inner circle. You'll present your evidence then. Yi-won will hate me. Yi-won will try to kill you if you're wrong. I'll kill you if you're lying. No emotion in his voice, just fact. But if you're right, you'll have proven yourself more valuable than my brother ever understood. He walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me alone with the weight of what I'd just set in motion. The next 3 days passed in agonizing slowness. Yi-won noticed my distraction and attributed it to wedding stress. He was more attentive than ever, bringing me flowers and planning romantic dinners. Each kind gesture felt like a nail in my coffin. I couldn't warn Dr. Choi, couldn't tell him what I'd done with his records, could only hope that when the dust settled, he'd survive the fallout. The family meeting was held in the main house's basement conference room. Concrete walls, no windows, a single long table where 12 people sat in precise hierarchy, Hyun-sik at one end, his mother at the other, Yi-won to her left, me beside him, his hand possessive on my knee. I felt like I was sitting at my own trial. Hyun-sik began without preamble. We have a traitor in the family, someone who's been selling operational intelligence to the Kims while maintaining the appearance of loyalty. Grace has evidence. Yi-won's hand tightened on my knee hard enough to bruise. What is this? I pulled out my phone and connected it to the room's display screen. Dr. Choi's surgical records filled the wall in high definition. Names, dates, locations, and administrative codes that traced back to a single source. These surgeries were performed on Kim family members, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. In Park family facilities, authorized by someone with high-level access to property management and security protocols, someone who could arrange treatment for enemies without raising suspicion. That's absurd, Yi-won said, his charming mask cracking. Those codes could be forged. This is manipulation. The codes match your administrative signature, Hyun-sik interrupted. His voice cold and absolute. I checked them myself before this meeting. Every authorization, every facility booking, every insurance claim, all logged under your credentials. The room went deathly silent. Yi-won released my knee and stood slowly, his expression shifting from shock to calculation to fury in rapid succession. You did this. You somehow, this is a setup. She's working with the Kims, Hyung. Can't you see it? She shows up out of nowhere, gets close to me, feeds you exactly the evidence you need to move against me. The surgical records predate her involvement by years, Hyun-sik said. And the administrative codes are yours, not forged, not planted, yours. I was building bridges. Yi-won's voice rose, his composure shattering. The Kims were willing to negotiate territory if we showed good faith. Small gestures, medical treatment in exchange for reduced aggression. I was trying to prevent a war while you were busy sharpening knives. You were trying to position yourself as indispensable to both sides, his mother said, her voice like ice cracking. Play peacemaker while ensuring conflict continued, profit from both families' fear. I was trying to evolve us beyond violence. Yi-won slammed his hand on the table. To build something legitimate while Hyun-sik kept us locked in the old ways. And yes, I kept it secret because you never would have approved. But I didn't betray us. I was trying to save us. By selling our security protocols, Hyun-sik said quietly. By scheduling surgeries that gave the Kims access to our facilities. By ensuring both families stayed at war while you collected fees from both sides. You weren't building peace. You were building your own empire in the space between us. The truth of it hung in the air like smoke. Yi-won looked around the table, seeing only closed faces and cold eyes. No allies, no sympathy. Finally, his gaze landed on me. You did this. You destroyed us. You did this, I said quietly. I just showed them what you'd been hiding. His hand moved toward his jacket. Hyun-sik moved faster. He was across the table before Yi-won's fingers cleared his pocket, his hand clamping around his brother's wrist with surgical precision. Don't. For the first time since I'd met him, emotion flickered across Hyun-sik's face. Something that might have been grief. Something that looked like rage compressed into diamond-hard control. You're my brother, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I taught you how to survive this life. I protected you when father's enemies came. I gave you the easy path while I took the blood, and you repaid that by selling us out for your vision of legitimacy. I was trying to save you, Yi-won said, his charm finally dying. From yourself, from this life, but you're too damaged to see it. Hyun-sik released his brother's wrist and stepped back. The family will vote on your punishment. Until then, you're confined to the estate. Your accounts are frozen. Your authority is suspended. And her, Yi-won gestured at me with pure venom. What happens to the woman who destroyed your brother? Hyun-sik's dark eyes met mine. She fulfilled her obligation to the family. She saw a threat and eliminated it. That's not destruction. That's loyalty. The meeting ended without ceremony. Guards escorted Yi-won from the room while he screamed threats and accusations. His mother left without looking at either of her sons. The other family members filtered out in silence, leaving me alone with Hyun-sik in the concrete room. I started shaking. You did well, Hyun-sik said, his voice returning to that neutral, controlled register. Clean evidence, clear presentation, no emotion. I just destroyed my engagement and possibly got myself killed. You survived. That's more than most people manage their first month in this family. I looked up at him, this scarred, brutal man who'd given me the only honest warning I'd received since meeting Yi-won. What happens now? Now the family votes on Yi-won's fate. Exile most likely, possibly death if the Kims retaliate badly. And you? He studied me with that same dissecting intensity. You've proven yourself valuable, smart, ruthless when necessary, loyal to the family over personal attachment. I'm not loyal to the family. I was trying to survive. Those are the same thing here. He moved to the door, then paused. Dr. Choi's records will disappear. His safe deposit box will be emptied tonight. He'll receive relocation assistance and a new identity. Consider it handled. Why? Because you asked. Hyun-sik's expression remained neutral, but something behind his eyes softened infinitesimally. And because you're right, he was desperate, not treacherous. I don't kill people for being afraid. He left me alone in the concrete room, with evidence of my betrayal still glowing on the screen. The family voted the next day. Exile. Yi-won had 48 hours to leave Seoul and never return. His assets were seized. His name was removed from family documents. He ceased to exist in every way that mattered. I didn't see him again before he left. My mother's treatment continued. The experimental therapy was working. Her doctors were optimistic. She asked about the wedding, and I told her we'd postponed indefinitely. She accepted it with the exhausted gratitude of someone too tired to question good fortune. I returned to work at the hospital, but everything had changed. Security personnel in expensive suits lingered in parking garages. Administrators who'd never known my name suddenly approved my schedule requests without question. Dr. Choi disappeared from the surgical roster. His office was cleaned out. No one mentioned him again. I'd become someone in the Park family infrastructure. Not decoration, not victim, something else entirely. Hyun-sik summoned me to his office 3 weeks later. It was in a building downtown, all glass and steel, legitimate enough on paper but humming with the same quiet danger as the man himself. His secretary, a severe woman with calculating eyes, ushered me into a corner office overlooking the Han River. He sat behind a desk empty, except for a single file folder. "Sit." I sat. Hyun-sik pushed the folder across the desk. Inside was a contract. Employment agreement with Park Holdings, Security Division. Salary that made my nursing income look like pocket change. Benefits that included housing, vehicle, and comprehensive family protection services. "You're not the nursing type anymore," Hyun-sik said. "You're too valuable to waste in a hospital when you have skills we need." "What skills? I exposed your brother. That's not a repeatable talent." "You're intelligent, observant, and calm under pressure. You understand how to gather evidence without triggering alarms. You're not afraid to make hard decisions when survival requires it." And his dark eyes held mine. "People underestimate women in this business. That's a weapon we've been underutilizing." "You want me to spy for you?" "I want you to be what you've already proven yourself capable of being. Someone who sees threats before they become catastrophes. Someone who chooses the family's survival over comfortable ignorance." I looked at the contract. The salary would clear my remaining debts in weeks, would ensure my mother never worried about medical bills again, would give me power instead of dependence, would make me fully complicit in everything the Park family did. "If I sign this," I said slowly, "I'm choosing this life, not just tolerating it because I married into it, actually choosing it." "Yes." "What happened to the person I reminded you of, the one who didn't get a choice?" Hyun-sik's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes went distant. "My father's second wife. She was a nurse too. Kind, intelligent, thought she could save him from himself. He kept her locked in the old house for 3 years before she hung herself from the bedroom rafters. I was 14. I found her." The brutality of it stole my breath. "You reminded me of her because she saw danger and chose to ignore it, chose to believe love could fix brutality. It couldn't." His voice remained perfectly controlled, but I heard the ghost of old rage beneath it. "You're different. You saw danger and chose to understand it, to learn its language. That's why you're still alive." I picked up the pen sitting beside the contract. Hyun-sik watched me without expression. "Once you sign, your family in truth, not decoration, not leverage, not my brother's abandoned fiancé. You'll be expected to handle situations that require your particular skills. You'll report directly to me. You'll see things that will change you." "I'm already changed." "This is permanent." I thought about the alternative, returning to my apartment, working night shifts, pretending the last 2 months hadn't happened. Living in the comfortable ignorance Yi-won had wanted to give me. It felt like suffocation. I signed the contract. Hyun-sik took it without ceremony and locked it in his desk. "Your first assignment is in Busan, Port District. Someone's been skimming from our shipping operations. Find out who, document it, and report back. You leave tomorrow." That's it. No training, no orientation. "You've been oriented." He stood, signaling the meeting's end. "You understand what we do. You've proven you can handle pressure. The rest is just application." I stood to leave, but paused at the door. Why did you really pay off my mother's medical debt? Hyun-sik looked up from the document he was reviewing, his dark eyes unreadable. Because Yi-won would have used it to keep you dependent, grateful, pliable. I wanted to see what you'd do with freedom, if you'd run or adapt. You were testing me from the beginning. I'm always testing people. That's how I keep this family alive. He returned to his document, dismissing me. Go home, pack. The driver will collect you at 6 a.m. I left his office feeling like I'd just signed a deal with something far more dangerous than the devil. But the thing that terrified me most wasn't the contract, or the assignment, or the blood money now flowing into my bank account. It was the fact that I felt more alive walking out of Hyun-sik's office than I had in years. The Busan assignment took 3 weeks. I found the skimmer, a dock supervisor with gambling debts, documented his theft patterns, and delivered a comprehensive report that led to his quiet disappearance. No police, no trial, just absence. I tried not to think about what handled meant. When I returned to Seoul, there was a key card to a new apartment in Gangnam waiting at my old building's front desk. Penthouse, view of the river, furniture that cost more than my yearly nursing salary. A note in Hyun-sik's precise handwriting, company housing, more secure than your previous location. I moved that weekend. My mother's treatment ended with tentative success. Remission. The doctors used words like miraculous and experimental therapy breakthrough. She cried with relief. I held her hand and smiled and didn't tell her the price of miracles. Work consumed me. Hyun-sik assigned me to internal audits, information gathering, and quiet investigations that required someone who could move through legitimate society without triggering suspicion. I attended hospital fundraisers and collected blackmail on corrupt administrators. I joined business networking groups and identified which executives were vulnerable to persuasion. I became a ghost in expensive clothes, documenting leverage while everyone assumed I was just another pretty face. I was good at it. Hyun-sik never praised me directly, but assignments got harder, more complex, more critical. I started attending family meetings, sitting quiet in the back, listening to debates about territory and tribute, learning the language of controlled violence. I saw him maybe twice a month, brief meetings in his office, curt emails with new assignments. No personal conversation, no warmth, just professional distance and brutal efficiency. Then the Kims retaliated. It started with bombs. 2 Park-owned warehouses in Incheon destroyed in coordinated strikes, then targeted assassinations. A district captain in Dongdaemun, a financial controller in Gangnam. Clean, professional kills that sent a message. You exiled your peacemaker. Now we're at war. The family fortified, armed guards at every property, mandatory security details for inner circle members. Hyun-sik moved between locations like smoke, untraceable and omnipresent, his expression carved from stone. I was assigned a security team, 3 men in suits who shadowed me to work, to my apartment, to my mother's hospital visits. It felt like prison and protection simultaneously. The war escalated for 6 weeks. Street skirmishes, territory disputes, businesses caught in the crossfire. Hyun-sik ran operations from the main house, sleeping maybe 3 hours a night, his face growing more severe with exhaustion. I saw him at a family meeting where he was coordinating a retaliatory strike. His tie was loose, sleeves rolled up, scars visible along his forearms, burns, cuts, what looked like bullet grooves. He directed people with mechanical precision, his voice never rising, his commands absolute. After the meeting, I waited until everyone else had left. You need sleep. I need victory. He didn't look up from the tactical maps spread across the table. Sleep is irrelevant. You're making mistakes. I saw you reference the wrong property location twice during briefing. His hands stilled on the maps. Then, slowly, he looked up at me with eyes that were exhausted and furious, and something else I couldn't name. You're dismissed. I'm not leaving you here to work yourself to death. That's not your decision. I pulled out a chair and sat across from him. Then I'll just sit here quietly until you collapse or admit you need rest. Your choice. For a long moment, I thought he might physically remove me from the room. His jaw was tight enough to break teeth. His hands were white-knuckled on the table edge. Then, gradually, something in his expression shifted, not softening exactly, just fracturing. When I close my eyes, I see targets, he said quietly. People who need to be eliminated, problems that need solving. I can't rest when the list keeps growing. The list will always grow. That's the nature of this work. If you burn yourself out, someone else has to pick up the torch. Probably someone less competent who will make catastrophic mistakes. His lips twitched into something that might have been a smile if it reached his eyes. Practical. I learned from the best. Hyun-sik stood and walked to the room's small bar, pouring 2 fingers of whiskey into a crystal glass. He didn't offer me one, just drank it in silence, staring at the tactical maps like they contained answers to questions he hadn't voiced. You've adapted well, he said finally, to this life, better than I expected. I'm surviving. That's different from thriving. No one thrives in this business. We survive with varying degrees of competence and damage. He set down the empty glass. You remind me less of my father's wife now, more of. He stopped. More of what? Someone worth protecting. He turned to face me, his expression unreadable, which complicates things. Why? Because I don't protect people. I use them, deploy them, eliminate them when they become liabilities. It's how I've kept this family alive. But you, his dark eyes searched my face with that same surgical intensity. You make me want to break my own rules. The confession hung between us like smoke. I stood, closing the distance between us, until I could see the exhaustion lines around his eyes, the faint tremor in his hands he was trying to hide, the scars disappearing beneath his collar. What rules? No personal attachments, no emotional investment, no caring about anything except family survival. I am family. You're more than that. His voice dropped lower, and that's the problem. He kissed me before I could respond. Not gentle, not romantic, just brutal, desperate need compressed into contact. His hand cupped the back of my head, his other arm pulling me against him like he was trying to prove I was real. I kissed him back with equal desperation. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. Hyun-sik's composure was shattered, his eyes wild with something that looked like fear and fury combined. This is a mistake. Probably. You're supposed to be at a safe distance. Observable, useful, not wanted. He closed his eyes. You're making me vulnerable. Vulnerable people make catastrophic decisions in this business. Then we won't tell anyone. I reached up and touched the scar through his eyebrow. We'll keep it between us. No one needs to know you're human underneath all the control. Grace. I'm not leaving. I'm not running. I chose this life. I chose you the moment I signed that contract. I held his gaze. Now you get to choose whether to keep pushing me away or admit that maybe survival is easier when you're not doing it alone. For a long moment, Hyun-sik just stared at me. Then he pulled me back into his arms, his face buried in my hair, his breathing unsteady. No words, just contact and exhaustion and relief. We stayed like that until his security team knocked to report the strike's outcome. The war with the Kims ended 3 months later, not through violence, but through economics. Hyun-sik orchestrated a series of financial moves that left the Kim family hemorrhaging money, while Park Holdings appeared to maintain normal operations. Targeted real estate acquisitions, strategic business partnerships. Quiet pressure on the Kim family's legitimate interests until their illegal operations couldn't support the losses. They called for negotiations. The meeting was held in neutral territory, a hotel conference room with both families' security lining the walls. Hyun-sik sat across from the Kim family head, a man in his 60s with cold eyes and colder calculations. I sat at Hyun-sik's right hand, not as decoration, as his second. The negotiations took 6 hours. Territory was redrawn. Tribute was established. New rules were codified. And at the center of it all was an unspoken understanding. Yi-won's exile had cost both families blood and money, but it had also eliminated the chaos of double dealing. The Kims could respect Hyun-sik's brutal clarity, even if they hated it. When the meeting ended, the Kim family head looked at me with something that might have been respect. "You're the one who caught the traitor." I documented evidence. Hyun-sik made the decision. Loyal and humble, dangerous combination. He nodded once at Hyun-sik. "You chose well." After they left, Hyun-sik and I sat alone in the conference room. His shoulders dropped infinitesimally. Not relaxation, just exhaustion finally acknowledged. "It's done," he said quietly. "For now." For now, he looked at me, his expression softening in ways only I ever saw. "You were invaluable today. The Kims respect strength, but they fear intelligence. You made them nervous." "Good." He stood and offered his hand. "Come on, we have celebrating to do." "What kind of celebrating?" "The kind where we disappear for 48 hours, and no one knows where to find us." We drove to a house I'd never seen. Traditional architecture hidden in the mountains outside Seoul. No guards, no staff, just silence and snow and the kind of privacy people like us never had. Inside, Hyun-sik locked the door and pulled me against him with bruising intensity. "I've wanted you in this house since the first moment you looked at me like I wasn't terrifying." "You are terrifying." "But you stayed anyway." His hands mapped my body like he was memorizing territories. "You chose the monster over the prince." "I chose honesty over fantasy." I pulled him toward the bedroom. "And I chose power over protection." We made love like people who'd spent months dancing around inevitability. No gentleness, no pretense, just desperate need and matched intensity and the kind of relief that comes from finally dropping all masks. Afterward, lying in darkness with his scars visible in moonlight, Hyun-sik traced patterns on my hip with methodical precision. "I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Intimacy without agenda. Vulnerability without calculation. You make me want things I eliminated from my personality years ago." "Like what?" "Safety." He said it like a confession, like admitting weakness. "Not for me, for you. I want you safe in ways that compromise operational efficiency." I turned to face him, memorizing the severe lines of his face, the damage visible in silver light. "Then we'll be inefficient together." "That's not how this works." "Maybe we change how it works." I kissed the scar through his eyebrow. "Maybe we build something that isn't just survival. Maybe we actually live." Hyun-sik's expression shifted, something vulnerable and fierce and almost hopeful. "That's ambitious." "I learned from you. You said I'm dangerous when I'm useful. Imagine what I could be when I'm happy." He pulled me closer, his arms iron bands of protection and possession. "Then let's find out." We stayed in that mountain house for 48 hours. No phones, no business, no war, just two people who'd chosen each other in the space between violence and peace. When we returned to Seoul, everything had changed and nothing had changed. The Park family still operated in shadows. The work was still brutal. The compromises were still necessary. But I woke up in Hyun-sik's arms now, sat beside him in family meetings, handled operations with his complete trust. We didn't advertise our relationship. Didn't need to. Everyone in the organization understood hierarchy through observation. I was no longer just useful. I was his. And in the world we inhabited, where loyalty was currency and power was survival, that meant something absolute. My mother's remission held. She moved into a smaller apartment near mine, finally free from medical debt, finally able to breathe. She asked about my work, and I told her I'd moved into corporate security. It wasn't entirely a lie. Dr. Choi sent a postcard from Vancouver 6 months after his disappearance. No message, just a postcard. I kept it as a reminder that sometimes survival meant running, and sometimes it meant standing still while everything around you burned. Yi-won never contacted me, never tried to return. Smart of him. Hyun-sik had made it clear that exile was mercy, and mercy was a limited resource. I thought about him sometimes. About the charming man who'd courted me with flowers and promises. About the desperate manipulator who'd played both sides while thinking he was building peace. About how different my life would have been if I'd stayed blind to the machinery underneath. But I'd chosen eyes-wide-open danger over comfortable ignorance. And in choosing Hyun-sik, damaged, brutal, honest, I'd chosen a kind of safety that only existed in proximity to the most dangerous man in Seoul. 1 year after that engagement party where everything changed, I stood on the balcony of the same penthouse where I'd first seen him. Seoul spread below in lights and darkness. Behind me, Hyun-sik emerged from a family meeting, his expression carved from stone, but his eyes softening when they found me. "Thinking about running?" he asked, stepping beside me. "Thinking about staying?" I leaned against him, feeling the solid warmth of a man who taught me that survival wasn't about avoiding danger. It was about understanding it completely. I was safe the moment you noticed me. His arm wrapped around my waist, protective, possessive, permanent. "You were safe," he agreed quietly, "the moment you chose to be dangerous." We stood there watching Seoul pulse with life and violence, and everything in between. Two people who'd found each other in the spaces where morality blurred and power consolidated, and brutal honesty felt like the closest thing to love. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was something better. It was real.